Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. And happy Pride, everyone. Happy Pride, Dublin. Happy Pride, Ireland. It's time for us to address one of the main issues right now in our country, a part of the COVID-19, which is direct provision. And the idea of the meeting today is, in a sense, 3 chapters that we'd like to read together. The first chapter would be conversation with 2 great activists that I know for years. Both of them, in a sense, represent Russia, but also represent European Union, because one of them, 2 of them, Vanya and Katya, are now in Berlin, and they will share with us their experience. And another one is Lyosha Gorshkov, who is in New York. But before we proceed, I'd like to start the conversation today with a motto, with words of Audre Lorde, in memory of all the Black people who have been killed across the globe. And I'd like to read this text to address to everyone who is listening to us, every member of LGBT community, every member of non-indifferent community, let's say. So Audre Lorde says this: without community, there is no liberation. Only the most vulnerable and temporary armistice between an individual and her oppression. But community must not mean a shedding of our differences, nor the pathetic pretense that these differences do not exist. And this is what we want to discuss today: our differences and our sense of community. So I'd like to invite Lyosha and Vanya and Katya to the screen. Say thank you, guys, for taking time to talk to us. And I'll just do a very brief introduction. Lyosha is a sociologist and social scientist, and he has been forced to leave Russia and claim for international protection in the United States of America. He has been granted it, and now is finally enjoying his academic and activist life. And Vanya and Katya are amazing people who I knew. Actually, Vanya is one of the inspiration in my life, because I saw him on the first channel in Russia when I was still quite a young activist, years and years and years ago. He was invited to the main program of Russia, and Andrei Malachov, and spoke about his homosexuality. Unfortunately, even now in Russia, there are very it's very hard for people to get into the mainstream media and directly speak about their sexuality. So that was a real big, remarkable moment. So I understand and recognize that the international agenda that we will be discussing today is partly biased by my own biography, by my own country of origin, but also I want to acknowledge that there are a lot of activists all over the globe who are trying to make the life of every individual better. And even though we will be probably addressing mostly Russia and Russian situation around Russia, but because of Russia is leading tabloids in homophobia for almost a decade already, and especially since gay propaganda law and the purges in Chechnya and all other crimes against humanity that state committed. And I really admire your bravery and everything you did for people who needed help, and that despite the fact that Lyosha, you went through the asylum process, which is a hard one, you also found strength and courage to mobilize the Russian-speaking community in New York to support gays and lesbians, bisexual, trans people, and non-binary people, intersex people, and so on and so forth. So, Vanya and Lyosha and Katya, I give the word to you. And the first question is for Lyosha. Lyosha, tell us a little bit about your organization, RUSA, and how you decided to go ahead with that, and how you decided to mobilize. How many of you are involved? We want to know a bit about your organization.
Of course. Thank you. I'm so excited because we are so isolated in the COVID era, and now like being internationally traveling through the social space, it's amazing. And I really appreciate that we are coming together in the period of time with all of us across the globe actually experiencing the global changes with a lot of protests going on around, and we are deeply involved. And as you mentioned, RUSA, actually RUSA LGBT organization, Russian American LGBTIQ Association, was established in 2008 as a kind of social club for those Soviet immigrants or post-Soviet immigrants who did not have the cultural space to get together. And at first it was kind of a club to meet, right? But after 2013, as you mentioned, the propaganda law, a lot of people started coming to the United States because of persecution, and myself included. And when I came here, actually, I was completely by myself. It's not like in Europe. In the United States, you don't have the system of support from the government if you're asylee or asylum seeker. So you have to find your own community. You don't have those benefits or programs or camps, whatever it's called. So, and it took me a while to find. And eventually I found that group of people, and they invited me, and we started collaborating together. And kind of, I moved into leadership position as well. But what I find very interesting being in the United States, so we are running away from our persecution, from humiliation, from some kind of purges against us in all post-Soviet republics, actually, because RUSA represents all post-Soviet republics, but of course, because of situation in Russia, predominantly it's Russian people from Russia, but as well as others. So, and I find it's very interesting. People come here, they look for freedom, they look for opportunities to express themselves eventually from that, or kind of relieve themselves from that purge. But they settle down in Russian-speaking areas. And I don't know if you've ever been to New York, but there is a autonomous republic of Soviets which called Brighton Beach. And Brighton Beach, not like Brighton Beach in England, but Brighton Beach in the United States, it's literally the frozen in time community of very conservative, traditional people. And because we don't have language when we come, we don't have culture, we don't have knowledge of the United States, we settle down there. And we kind of encapsulating ourselves, we are re-traumatizing ourselves because not all people acknowledge their sexuality. So, and that's what, when we've started doing, because RUSA has been doing political protests with Sochi Olympics, it was a huge campaign against IKEA, against Smirnoff vodka, with a prominent organization, and we did a lot of protests, but we never addressed to the Russian-speaking community itself. And when I started going, I lived there, and I was like, why? Body fights the homophobia, transphobia, biphobia, or racism, or sexism. And my people told me that let them die. Let Brighton Beach die before we can reclaim the space. So it's like the same. Communists should die before liberals could take over in Russia. It was the 90s. So that's the same attitude. And that's why I realized that we have to do something. We started doing support groups for asylum seekers and who just come because we don't have that system of support. We started doing a lot of advocacy. We started reaching out city officials, and you know that in the United States, every single organization does not have some kind of much support from the government, right? So you have to go on your own, you have to find your partners, you have to find those people who relate to you. So, and that's why it took us so long to claim that Russian-speaking queer immigrants exist. So we have struggled. We're struggling with the system. We're struggling with the process. As you mentioned, asylum process is not the walk in the dunes. It's a very traumatic experience, as all of you know, I believe. So that's why, of course, we started doing a lot of advocacy, and eventually we launched the first Russian-speaking pride called Brighton Beach Pride, just to, believe or not, in 21st century, to say that we're queer, we're here. So to let those people who live in New York but not in New York, in Brighton Beach, know that we are their neighbors, we're friends, we are store managers, we are different professions, careers they utilize. So it's a lot of trauma, it's a lot of internalized homophobia and transphobia in the community. But of course, we are trying to do our best. We are not perfect, nobody is perfect. We have our clashes and divisions. It's not easy to be a multicultural or multi-ethnic organization, because we have, do not forget, we have clashes within the community because of Crimea. We have clashes because of certain issues with Georgia in 2008. So we have some people from Russia who are very racist, who are very politically incorrect, who are very colonially engaged. So that's why we have multiple fronts to fight. And of course, you already mentioned purges in Chechnya, and unfortunately the United States is not handling that crisis in any way, because the United States only country has refused to accept any refugees or asylum seekers or humanitarian parole people from Chechnya, because it's anti-Muslim intentions and values of the United States. What we are trying to do, we're trying through the public advocacy, through the protests, through the different conversation with the government, with our friends, to acknowledge that people across the globe, Russian-speaking people, flee persecution and they need support. And that's why we're always trying to be on top as much as we could. But we are a volunteer-based organization. So, you know, we can go on and go on and go on, but fire away, you can ask any specific questions if you're interested in.
Thank you, Losha. Thank you. Well, before we started, I acknowledge that, you know, Ireland holds this mid-Atlantic geographical, geopolitical position that, being part of the European Union, we also feel quite close to the United States because of the language, because of the diaspora, and because of other things. So we kind of understood a little bit the context in the United States. But I would like to ask my friends from Berlin, who are now, in a sense, represent European Union, represent also not just because of the position of Germany in the European Union, but also because when we speak about refugees, when we speak about people in need of international protection, displaced people, Germany always becoming an example of a country who, which in 2015 were able to give shelter, give space, give safety for over 1 million of people. Just FYI, in Ireland there are 7,000 asylum seekers, and their cases are delayed years and years. So Vanya and Katya, I'll give you voice. Please tell us a little bit about Quartira and about everything you did, how it started, what was the reason to start it. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us here. And it was very funny to listening to Losha's stories of Russia being founded, because it's almost the same story of Quartira. Quartira was founded nearly 10 years ago by friends and lovers, and back in 2010 we organized the first Russian-speaking group on Berlin Pride. And this case you mentioned when you saw me in Russian television, it was it was quite after this pride. A lot of photos, pictures from this pride came to across over the world, and also it was a big issue on Russian television. So this how I came to Russian television. And after that, my big friend Zlata told me that we need some protection. We need proper German organization. We have to get organized because, and it was one of the best things we've ever done, because once you get a business card of non-government organization in Germany, you get another voice. Yeah, you can be heard by officials and by lawyers and so on. So we just started the same. It was kind of club for friends, and we just wanted to educate our people here from the former Soviet Union, who are a lot here. Yeah, like almost 2 or 4 million people in Germany are Russian-speaking ones. So, but then in 2014, the first person who was applying for asylum here in Germany, he came to us and asked us for help. So this was the beginning of the bigger story of Quartira, because then we had to reorganize ourselves to get expertise in many things we didn't know before, like how to hosting people, how to help with their stories when they come to the lawyers and on to the courts and so on. And I'm gonna tell you later maybe on what is the achievement we achieved in this part. And Katya, would you like to add something?
No, not yet.
Actually, we are not a government funding organization. We are still for 99% volunteering organization, grassrooting ones and community-based ones. So last year, it was the year of change. We found some project financing funding for, and that helped us to get one paid job. So we are still a volunteering organization.
Yeah. I also know, I remember what I wanted to add is that Lyosha was saying that when you come to Europe, there are all these organizations that help you if you're a refugee and if you're a queer refugee. It's actually really interesting that maybe in the United States it's even worse, but even a few years ago here in Germany, it was exactly the same. The queer person would come if they're a refugee, or if they need actually protection, right? If they want to stay in Germany, and it was not clear for them where to go. So they still had to, for example, this is how it started for Quartira, this whole like organizing around the refugee issue, because people would come and they just didn't have any other place to go.
Yeah, but they were forced to stay at housings, and this so-called refugee camps. It wasn't a camp, but still they are forced to stay there and to share a flat, or let's say a room, with people from Russia, from Chechnya, who are in so many, let's say they are very often homophobic, and it's not very secure and safe for people to stay at these places. And they faced so much violence, so we had to go to the officials here in Germany, to the politicians, to start campaigning. And it was like, now when I'm looking back, it's a history of success, because we achieved a lot.
Thank you. It's actually a quite inspiring here that, when you put the effort, it can really bring a change. And in this sense, my question for both of you, but for three of you, but maybe mostly for Lyosha. Lyosha, you said that the people don't have anything when they claim for protection in the US. What is happening? Like, okay, you arrived to the US and you asked for protection, and then what? Like, how everything is looked like? look like in this?
So you have to understand that the United States is completely, even though we're in the agreement about asylum and the international law agreement, but we have our own law about asylum and immigration process in the States. So here, for example, you cannot come and claim, you can come and claim in the airport, but in order to get to the United States, you still have to get a visa, which is the problematic, right? So by now, as a current events, people who want to apply for asylum, who have persecution history or whatever, afraid, they have to come by visa and by tourist visa. The other types of visa will not be considered as the legal ground to claim asylum. So you come to the United States, you have to come and claim asylum from within. And you have 1 year since you entered the United States to apply for asylum. But the tricky part of this process is, so you can claim asylum within 1 year, but you have only maximum 6 months of legal status in the United States as a tourist, because after 6 months it expires. And if you get caught by the immigration police, you could be automatically deported, even though you have that 1 year window, right? So there is a lot of complications. So you come, you have to find a lawyer. Thanks God, we have a great chain of pro bono free lawyers. We've established a legal clinic, and it's the most what we've achieved. But it's still overwhelmed because the asylum process is very bureaucratically long. People who applied, for example, 2015-16, they're still waiting. But people who applied like yesterday or a year ago, they will be first to get through the interview. So you have to apply, you have to wait, you go to the interview process, you cannot work legally, you have to work off the book. So, and if you go through the asylum process, and if you granted asylum indefinitely, you already authorized to work, and you have 1 year after which you apply for green card, ideally, and after 4 years you apply for the citizenship. But the problem is, so there is a backlog, there is a lot of different offices, the people waiting years and years online to be processed, right? So, and in the meantime, you don't have much support, you don't have much benefits, for example, right? So there are a lot of different, and if your case denied, automatically goes to the immigration court, and you have to appear before the immigration judge with lawyers. It's a whole process. So at the third stage, if you are denied with the immigration court, it's an appeals court, but it's rarely executed. But I would like to point one thing, unless, unlike Europe, in the United States, you still have that easiest application process. Why? Because you have to claim that you are afraid of being persecuted. So if you never experienced yourself, but you know it's going on in Russia, for example, you still can claim being LGBTIQA. As far as I'm concerned, some countries or Europe, you have to have solid proof that you are physically threatened, you are institutionally threatened, you are whatever. In the United States, it's only if the country conditions are still kind of hostile towards LGBTIQ people. So, but we are in the new era of the orange menace in the United States, and the process of immigration a little bit changing. But let's see, I hope for the best, but we kind of already a little bit in disturbance.
Thank you, Losha. Vanya, and how is it that it's all happening in Germany? Katya?
Yeah, for the person who came to Germany, it's first they face here is like being forced to stay in this housing, and then without being allowed to do any job, and back in 2014 without any language courses, but they get founded, like they get 300 euros like for living. And back in that time, we got a lot of fundraising in order to pay language courses and lawyers. Nowadays, it's a little bit easier, and yeah, but still people have to wait like for 2 years in this closed housings, camps in the middle of nowhere. And we've got a case like it's very scandalous. It's a big scandal now in Germany. A gay guy from Russia who applied for asylum 5 years ago. He got denied because of their judge. She didn't believe him he is gay, although he was married to a guy. Like she literally say, "I don't believe you don't look like a gay." Yeah, it was in Bavaria. It's southern part of Germany, and this is what we face day to day. Like it's not up to the story you tell, but often it's up to the personal prejudices and like misbelievings of judges and officials somewhere in the Germany, and we face asylum seekers from the former Soviet countries. They hope to find a new, better life, but so often they face so much homophobia and xenophobia, even here in Germany. That's a big issue. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I'm very conscious of time. Katya, sorry, excuse me. If you wanted to add something,
I guess I just wanted to add, because of the language course, it might not be obvious if you're in the United States, for example, or in any English-speaking country. But people coming to Germany, they don't usually speak any German. German is not language that everyone speaks everywhere. So it's literally you end up being in this secluded space with other people who are waiting for who are other asylum seekers. Who, I mean, before you are together, as Vanya already mentioned, with people who are not queer refugees necessarily. So they might have all these, homophobic ideas, and they are traumatized themselves, and there's like a lot of violence and everything. And so you're in this secluded space without speaking German, without being able to work. You don't have much to do somehow during the day, and without the community support and without people who are just like you.
Yeah, but one of our biggest achievement is the queer housing in Berlin for queer asylum seekers, like our allies from the Schwulenberatung did, and it's a big thing. It's a safe space for queer asylum seekers.
Wow. And who financed it? Is it the Berlin government or?
Yes. Yeah, we've been several times to several politicians, and we kept on rising awareness about this issue and about the violence in the asylum seeker housings, and so it ended up in this queer housing founded by the government of Berlin.
Dublin City Council, if you hear us, look, there is a good example. I also would like to say that, from what I was hearing, like LGBT lawyers, if you can take cases pro bono, there is a lot of issues with this. There is not enough capacity. So Irish LGBT lawyers and solicitors, please take pro bono cases of people, helping them, and also the fundraising to pay language courses. I think it's still very important. There is nothing here. There is very limited number of volunteer-based courses, so people need a professional learning of English, because it open doors, and it's still not achievable for a lot of people. So I think that's also a good idea if someone is listening who have a capacity to do something like that. That would be great. Because I'm very conscious about time, and I wouldn't like to take much more of your time. I just like to say, maybe in very few words, the greatest achievement that you feel you've done as an organization, and maybe the greatest challenge that you've gone through. So let's start traditionally with Lyosha, and then Vanya and Katya, and we will switch to the second chapter of our conversation.
Yes, thank you. So the greatest achievement, we've established that chain of the lawyers, and pro bono lawyers. We have a great relationship. We finally got to the city council and mayor's office, and we got recognized by the parliament that we exist, and they try to help us in terms of investigating hate crimes and abuse. We've got the greatest allies from around the United States who fundraise for us, who donate us. We've established the global platform with the queer millennials in United States called Voices for, originally Voices for Chechnya, and now they land chapters in Germany, in France, and Belgium, in London. So we also established that system of support because we don't have mentally and psychological and emotional space, but every single Wednesday our guys will come. And recently in the COVID, we've established the fund. We help them to relieve the stress for people who lost their jobs because of they do not have authorization to work. We help them with our money, which we got from our partners. So, and of course, we finally started saying out loud with the Brighton Beach Pride that queer people from the Russian-speaking countries not going anywhere, and they're gonna fight, and you have to swallow that. So that's our greatest achievement.
Yeah. And the greatest challenge, Losha?
And the greatest challenge is what we face. It's misunderstanding of the context of our countries, not totally finding the resources from the Russian-speaking community to help our people because they're still homophobic and transphobic. And of course, the lack of knowledge within our own community about other identities, about other groups. So which is very surprising. A lot of Russian-speaking people support, for example, Trump's policies and support racist and sexist strategies against people here. So that's the biggest challenge. The biggest enemy, it's your own self. So that's why we're trying to fight within the community to educate the community. That's what I guess and you know, the Russian-speaking people not eager to help because that's our motto. If you had troubles surviving the persecution, let others survive on their own. So that's the biggest challenge.
And also I would like to acknowledge that, you know, there is a lot of internal Soviet racism against people in South Caucasus and Central Asia who experienced a huge violence and neglection of the ethnic, let's say, Russian population within Russia, within the Soviet republics and abroad. Vanya, Katya, your biggest achievement and your biggest challenge?
I would like to start with the challenge because this is where our achievement came from. It was a lot of burnouts in the middle of our organization. Like in that time back 4 or 5, 2 years ago, when we were very involved in the work with the asylum seekers, and we felt alone and we felt responsible for all of them and for all their life. And there were some cases where people took their life, and this feeling of guilty, like we didn't help a lot or much or enough, it was a big challenge for us. And we are happy to quit our job, like almost in this level, in the very moment we could look around and see a lot of organization doing this job like for us. And people from Kvartira were involved in this job. Like nowadays, we've got Russian-speaking Kvartira members in Schwulenberatung, in Smigras, and other organizations helping with their funding, support from the country, helping for queer refugees. Yeah, and like achieving sensitivity training for translators, for officials, and so on. Like what we were demanded from the politics, it seems to achieve. Yeah.
Yeah. What Vanya meant, I think it's like nice to imagine, is that kind of we gathered this expertise as an organization on the early stage of this whole refugee crisis, one might say, of queer refugees coming from Russia. So we gathered this expertise as a non-governmental organization without any governmental funding or funding whatsoever. We just gathered some sources from the community, but there was not enough. And now we kind of infiltrated all the NGOs around here in Berlin. We have members of Quartiere here and there, and they help with their expertise now on the professional level to NGOs who actually have resources to actually help asylum seekers.
Yeah, and who are working for money, like not in Quartiere, but somewhere else. And this is really a good feeling to see our effort like landing in this achievement. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really thank you for your time, and most of all, I admire everything you've done and your great and absolutely exemplar work that you've done over years already. I want to just say, stay safe in this uncertain time. Keep the social distance, wash your hand, but stay close. I love you. I hope to see you soon again. Thank you very much. Happy Pride, Katya. Bye.
Thank you.
And yeah, I hope we will meet soon. Bye bye. We are moving to our second chapter, as I call it, and I also have a motto for that. And the motto is from Queer Nation Manifesto. It says this: our difference, our otherness, our uniqueness can either paralyze us or politicize us. And a lot of things that I am doing is because I don't want to be paralyzed, even though the system of direct provision is designed to paralyze us, to make us not move forward, to give up. And I'm not alone in that. And I'm so happy to invite to my close friends, fantastic, absolutely fantastic activists who are now still in direct provision, Delroy Mpofu and Jabulo. And I'm so happy, I'm so grateful for you to be visible, to deny to being paralyzed and to be politicizing and to be, not to have this fear, to go further, even though you are still in that notorious facilities which we created. So I'd like to also start with a story of success, which for me represent, in a sense, how we can collaborate, how we can bring together our expertise, our social capital, as one would say. And this is the story that starts during the Winter Pride. During the Winter Pride, we were talking, Jabulo, Delroy, and myself. We were invited to deliver a talk, and being there, we just get the GCN magazine where Noah Halpin, who has I think it's his birthday today, so happy birthday, Noah, if you're seeing us. Noah described his story, how he organized a fundraising campaign and how he got enough money to travel to Poland to make top surgery. So in Ireland, the waiting time is up to 7 years, which is absolutely crazy, and people have to, manage themselves and find money to travel to other country to get the surgery. So which is a big problem, and it needs to be acknowledged. The issues, the challenges of trans community in Ireland are tremendous, and so we get inspired with that story. And I said to Delroy, so we need to do the same, Delroy. We just need to do the same. And he said, well, maybe it will be very hard. And then I was thinking, yeah, it might be very hard. It's too much money. When you are living on 30 euros per week, you kind of think that 7,000 is something that you will never achieve. Like it looks like millions to you. So, but then we decided, we met with Noah, we discussed how to do that and stuff. Delroy did all the job. He wrote to the surgeon in Poland. He got the appointment and things like that. And then COVID started, and we were a little bit paralyzed by that situation. But then we decided, okay, we need to start, because it's a Pride Month, it's a World Refugee Day. Let's start the campaign, the fundraising campaign now. And to be honest, I was preparing to invest a lot of time in that, and I was ready for that. But Delroy just launched the campaign on Sunday evening, and on Monday morning we got the money. So Delroy, Noah, and maybe myself too, we might travel to Warsaw to get the surgery. And I really would like to acknowledge everyone, every people of this 200 and almost 300 people who donated their bits to get us a bit closer to that. And I really feel that was the joy, the joy that we were feeling every half an hour when we were opening the GoFundMe, and it was like 5,000 already. It's very hard to describe that feeling of joy. And this is what community can do to each other. When we feel that the community is close, when we feel that the community is near, and the community is ready to help. And I also want to say thanks to Delroy for his bravery, for his commitment, and for being my friend. Thank you, Delroy. Thank you, Njabulo. So I give a word to you. I was speaking too much today. So please, Delroy, let's start with you. What is your main, let's say, feeling now when you are already so close to get out of the reprovision, but you spent almost 3 years? So tell us a little bit about, let's say, your what are you dreaming about? Where would you like to be in a year time? Let's say in the next Pride. You are muted, Delroy. You're muted.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, perfect. Well, first and foremost, I would like to say thank you for this platform, and thank you for everybody who supported me through donating for my top surgery. That means everything to me. Thank you so much to Noah for helping us, and yourself, Evgeny. Thank you so much for helping me with drafting the whole thing and coming up with the whole strategizing and everything. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. And everybody who donated, to all of the 267 people who donated, thank you so much. Like, I really appreciate, like, all of you have contributed to something that I'll always appreciate with everything that I have. Like, it's a lot. Thank you so much. I appreciate. And then to answer your questions, like, well, it's amazing to get your status in Ireland, to finally get your status. And like, the first thing that comes into your mind will be like, oh my God, finally I can live direct provision. And I've been on that road since last year. Like I was saying, like, finally I will live direct provision, and I'm still hoping so that I'll live very soon. And it's an amazing feeling, because you finally know that you'll be able to start your life all over again. You'll be able to be yourself. You'll be able to do some things that you couldn't do while you're in direct provision, and all that. You stop living on the limbo, and you are finally yourself. But if given a chance that maybe, I'd say probably next year, this Pride, I'm hoping that I'll be out of the provision completely, and I'll be independent and not relying on someone else to provide food for me or clothing allowance for me. I'd love to be independent as well. I'd love to face the real world, because right now I don't know the real world, because I'm stuck here. I'm separated from everybody else. Like, I know what's happening, but I don't really know, because it's different when you're not part of what's happening out there. So yeah, probably I'll be excited about going to university, because that's my biggest dream, to go to university and be able to to contribute to this wonderful society that has been there for me. A lot of people have been there for me, so I would love to give that back, give my time back, and yeah, that would make me happy, really. Yeah.
Thank you, Delroy. Njabulo. Yeah, you are muted. Njabulo, thank you for being here with us today. I asked you before we went live here. I asked you about the new government that is to be set probably even this week. One of the things in the program is that they said that they will end the provision, which I have still my concerns. But let's imagine, why not? They finished it. So where would you like to be? How would you like? How are you imagining your life without that ugly conditions that you're forced to remain in right now?
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Thanks for the platform that you have given us to voice our opinions here, and congratulations to Delroy on raising the money for your surgery. Thank you to all the people that supported you, because your success is my success also. To answer your question, Evgeny, I first have to highlight some of the challenges that I'm facing as a queer woman of color in direct provision. Um, in Winter Pride, I brought up a situation that I was in, where I was depressed, very much depressed. But because of the platform that you gave me, I sort of like gained a few friends in the process, and a few channels were also opened for me. But I can still, even now, I can't, I can't have access to a psychologist, because I was told that here in North Clay, um, there is no psychologist that is able to see us. Of course, there are psychologists, but not with our medical cards. So, how do they open a center here where they know that people are in need of um, such services, but then you cannot access such? Um, the transport issue also. People who stay in Liston Vanna, they know the issue with transport. If I go to Dublin and I happen to finish whatever I want to do there after 2 o'clock, I will not be able to find transport. I might find transport to Ennis, but from Ennis to get here, I will not be able to find transport. So a lot of us find ourselves sleeping at train stations, because now we do not have money to book into a hostel to sleep over until the next morning. Uh, when I first got here, the very first thing that I asked for was to be referred to an LGBT support group, peer support group. There isn't any. You know, if such basic services are not available here, then this direct provision is a breeding ground for suicide. I'm saying it again. Uh, what I would like to see happening in future, it has to start now. The change has to start now. In the words of Martin Luther King, he said, "The words of our enemies will never be worse than the silence of our friends." So what I'm saying is the Irish LGBT activists, they must stand up with us and support us. I know they've been supporting us. We've had that support. But the system has got their knees on our necks. We really can't breathe in direct provision. Uh, I'm a pretty tolerant person, and this is because I'm deeply flawed myself. And therefore, I understand human infallibility and how we are all flawed. But what I'm intolerant of are cowards. I'm seriously repulsed by people who are cowards, by those people who slither through life with no spine, those who are constantly thinking of self preservation even when they see an injustice being done. I mean, if we all stood together, like we have seen people standing up for Black Lives Matter, but in this instant, if we all stand up together against direct provision, we might see a speedy response. I'm not only talking for the LGBT people, but I'm talking on behalf of everybody that is affected or is in the direct provision system. I'd like to be free. I'd like to study, because when I came here, I thought, I left. I was going to start a different life here and take a completely different path. But if all that is offered here in Lisdonwana is for me to become a carer, I don't want to become a carer. I didn't come here to become a carer. So I need a variety of other courses that I'll be able to do, but that is not available to me because of the location that I'm in. But if I was not in direct provision, I would live where where all the services that I need would be available. That's why most people want to go and stay in Dublin, or stay in Cork or in other bigger towns. It's because of the services that we need access to.
Yeah.
So what I want in future is just to see us all free, our freedom. Because here we are dictated when you get to eat, what you are supposed to eat. Now imagine if you were to take an Irish person and put them in Africa and then feed them back and all those African diets. How would that feel? Because what we are being fed here is not what we are used to. Yes, it's okay for 1 to 3 days, but after that, no. We don't want to keep on receiving. We also want to contribute to the community. So they are making us feel like we are invalids. We want to earn our living. Thank you.
Thank you, Jabulo. Thank you. And I think we cannot. And I feel that I don't know how to acknowledge, how to, in a sense, speak about it, because I am speechless since all the protests that started with Black Lives Matter, with all the mobilization of people whose message since Martin Luther King has changed significantly, because it's not about I have a dream, it's about I cannot breathe. This impossibility to breathe, this is something that is very hard to speak about, but it's something that we need to speak about. And in the Pride Guide this year, I was invited to contribute with a text, and I reflect there on the the idea that yes, in a sense, we are very vulnerable. We are probably even more vulnerable than most of others in the same situation. But at the same time, there's something that makes us stronger. And this strength that you show, being able to look directly to the camera and address this, is something that I just cannot express how I appreciate your strengths and your courage. And if you can share with the audience, and especially with another LGBT people of color who might watch us today, some message of support, some message of, we are in this together, not they are. I don't think they are with us in this, but I do think we are in this together, and I do think we need to support each other. So maybe Delroy, you can start, and you can say some words of support to others, Black people in Ireland, and everyone who look at you guys as an example of bravery as an example of honesty and an example of, you know, courageous and like great people that you are.
All right. Well, to every person out there, to every person of color out there, I want you to know that your life matters as well. And to every other person, every other LGBT person or any other person from a minority group, I want you to know that you matter. And one day things are going to get better. We won't always be where we are right now. But what we need to do is to stand together, is to join hands and work together. Because I believe like when we stand united, we are hard to come in between, and we are hard to destroy. Like we are stronger together as a united front. If there are times whereby like things get tough or life seems like you're going nowhere, just know that like one day things will get better. Just hang in there and just reach out to people who care about you. Just hang out, just reach out to somebody. There's always someone who is willing to listen to you, someone who's willing to just give you an ear, even if they might not have what you need at that moment, but just to have someone to talk to. We are there. Like if you need anything, like we are there. We are together in this. You will never walk through this alone, but we are working in this together. And in order for us to conquer this, in order for us to win this battle, we have to work together and we have to stand united. And if one of our brothers or sisters is feeling like they are lagging behind, we just wait for them and we work together. Don't run alone in the front. We wait together and we work together. We will conquer this as well.
Love you. Thank you. Jabulo.
Oh, okay. I'd like to say to everyone, every person of color that is LGBT, you are strong. You have been strong for many centuries. You can do this. But I don't want to dwell on the race too much, because what I've seen here in Ireland, people can stand together, regardless of color. We can do this. Let's stand together. We've seen uh, all over the world how people stood up, um, different races. So now let's leave color behind. Of course, it's still happening. Yes, I know, but let's leave it behind, because we have white allies that stand with us, different races that stand with us, that don't see any color. People that are also fighting this direct provision. Let's stand together. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, and I really think that, you know, it cannot be only the community work. It can be not only a protest. It has to be both strengths used together to change, to shift, to provide this shift, to mobilize and to help those who need it. Because you know, I remember recently I was reading one text, and the person, the author, says that, you know, I will stand with you together in the field of battle, but I also will be there to cure your to nurse you, you know. And it is important to be able to nurse and to be able to fight together. This is something that we cannot forget, and we cannot only limit our help to these charitable models, but we also need to mobilize. We also need to be political, and both things are equally important. And we see from Delroy's story that, for example, you know, Delroy got papers a year ago. He still has no possibility to move out of direct provision. So if there is people who know how to help. The reason why is, I think there are multiple reasons. One of them, of course, it's racism. Of course, it's racism and transphobia, and let's acknowledge it as it is. But it's also the state has provided a program which is called HAP, Housing Assistance Payments, and every landlord, when they hear about HAP, they don't want people to take. And this is a very big issue for the residents of direct provision who have already their status, all the documents. They cannot move out because of HAP. So maybe we need to do something with HAP or with landlords, but we need to do something about the situation because it's already not serious. And then another situation is what Njabulo was saying, and I think it's important to, LGBT psychologists, please, pro bono, take cases of people. They really need support. They are struggling with mental health. It's so important right now to help them, because this system, and I went through this system, I know what I'm talking about. It's something that corrupts you to the very deep. So we need your support. We need the support of lawyers. We need the support of psychologists. And we as a community, as a queer nation, as LGBT diaspora, we do have among us psychologists, we do have lawyers. So please come on board, help people. I really encourage you to help. Guys, before I say goodbye to you, I just wanna one more time acknowledge, and if there is something that the LGBT community of Ireland can do, please be vocal about it. Please let people know. So the last question would be, before we proceed with Irish LGBT activists, what would you like us to do? How can we help? Maybe Delroy.
I think the first thing that can be done, is there are people with voices which are louder than us. There are people with platforms. If they can stand with us and keep supporting us to try and help us campaign to end direct provision because it's not working at all, and then campaign for people seeking international protection to be able to access employment earlier, so that they can start preparing themselves and contributing to this country. It's much easier. And if there are people who can offer services, any form of service, they can come and join in and help people. There are people out there who need those services. It can be little things, even little items. There's some people who live maybe in emergency accommodation centers. They might need little items, maybe clothing for kids. It's just a few things that I can think of. It's important that we join in together. We support each other. We can do this. I think we can do this. We've got this. And if ever there are politicians listening to this, they just need to stand with us, keep fighting with us, because their voices are stronger and ahead, much louder, easier than ours. So they need to stand with us. We can do this. We got this as a country, as a nation. We got this.
Thank you. Njabulo.
Okay, I'd like to second what Delroy has just said. I couldn't have said it better. I think as a collective, people that are staying in direct provision, we are suffering from depression. And a huge part of depression is not sadness, but anger. And the anger comes from the things that I earlier talked about. And this depression, it's anger that is now directed inwards, which is why the final act of this untreated depression can be suicide. It can be many things. Where now you kill yourself because you are pissed at not being able to cope, pissed over the whole life thing. So I would appreciate if the other LGBT community, Irish LGBT community, would be there to listen. Like Delroy has said, that some have got voices that can speak louder than ours, that they can listen to all the things that we go through and stand together with us, fight with us, and just give us support. We are in this together. We need you, and you need us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Njabulo. And guys, the last thing I wanna say, and I wanna be very explicit about that. I really wanna be very loud. Black Lives Matter, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. We are. Oh, that was especially emotionally hard for me. But we are switching to two fantastic Irish activists. We are approaching to our third and last chapter today, and the motto that I picked for it, I will read at the end because I think this is something that is in a sense constitute us as a community, and something that resonates very much with the actual moment. So I save it for the end. But one thing that I really was very explicit about it in a lot of talks and events that I've been. The direct revision is not a responsibility of people living in direct provision. Direct provision is a responsibility of all Irish society, and everyone who associate him or herself or themselves to this country and see the future in this country, we need to do something about it. It's not okay that it exists, and we need to push as much as we can on an everyday basis. And precisely because I strictly believe that this is the responsibility of those who are living here, of every single individual, I invited two people that I genuinely admire. My big love, Sarah Phillips, and my good friend, fantastic, funny, great person, Devi Kinlevan. And the reason why I invited them, not just because I genuinely love these people, but because from my point of view, they represent, in a sense, this dichotomy, which is maybe a false dichotomy of institutionalized activism, NGO-based activism, and the grassroots, the activism which is not formalized, let's say, in some legal entity, but it is this impossibility to stay and observe silently what is happening, all the injustices. So I'm really glad to present Sarah Phillips and Devi Kinlevan, and I'd start with Sarah, with you, if you don't mind. So the main question is, what do you think can be done right now for LGBT people in direct provision or in the asylum process? What you know better, what are the resources there, and if the organizations are under-resourced, we need to address it too. But with what we have right now today, what would you see as a possibility?
First of all, Evgeny, sorry, thank you so much for inviting me. I think the last hour has been actually unbelievable, but I also think that it's so important to hear these voices more often, because consistently we don't hear people's experience. And, I personally know Delroy, and I know I've heard his story many times, and your own story. I think we need to be listening to their voices and your voices more often and highlight the issues that people are going through. Because I think obviously, I think it's a disgrace, to be honest with you, that we're now 20 years into this system. And like everything else in Ireland, it takes over 20 years to dismantle these injustices. We've seen this in the LGBT community for so long, over many years, whether it was decriminalization, whether it was gender recognition, whether it was healthcare or whatever. I think what can we do right now? I think we need to start coming together, because I think individually, and even individually as NGOs, I don't think we necessarily have the resources, but maybe we could pull them together. I think there is an opportunity here that, we need to start supporting not just, I think, the LGBT community within direct provision, but the whole community within direct provision, because I don't think you can isolate out just our own community. I do think I agree with you when you said earlier that there is, different issues for, LGBT people. And I know from my own experience within the trans community, issues that the trans community have had in direct provision, that need to be dealt with. But also, I think, we need to be fighting and standing together, as both Delroy and Jabu said, for the whole of everybody that is in direct provision. But I do think we need to come together. I think there needs to be a coalition of not just the LGBT NGOs, but also maybe the civil society NGOs, people like Amnesty and ENAR, etc., the other groups. I think maybe that's the situation. We need to all get in and see what we can achieve together rather than necessarily trying to do our own little bit.
Thank you, Sarah. Debbie, the same question for you.
I suppose, I think for me, a lot of my education and learning around this has actually happened from just turning up to things. I think a lot of people are afraid to say that they don't know something, or are afraid to turn up if they're not already informed. But I think the most important learning that people do is turning up open-minded and being available to learn and to experience and to hear things that maybe they've never heard or heard the experience of before, and see how that translates to other facets of their life and what that does. I mean, for me, like I would have been very pro-abortion all of my life, but actually didn't realize how important it was to be vocally pro-choice until after the Savita story in 2012. And I suddenly realized the importance of us actually having to have this conversation and not being sure. I was like, I know that that's something that I believe in, but I was like, how do I convey this? Is it my place to say this as a cis man? Where do I fit into this piece of the puzzle? And actually, the first thing I did for about 6 months was just turn up and listen, so I could find out when and how and what I needed to know and where I should speak and how I should. And I realized that the power of grassroots activism a lot is looking around you and seeing who isn't at your table and trying to figure that out. If you're like, we're all inclusive and blah, 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 but your meeting is on the 3rd floor, there's a lot of people that can't access that. If your meeting is in the city center, there's people who can't access that. If there's certain realizations, I think, across the board that kind of akin to what they were saying, there needs to be a lot of groups need to row in together and figure out the power of what they can do together in that learning, because you might have spent 6 months, figuring out one avenue, and they have spent 6 months figuring out another, and together all of that information is actually very powerful. But everyone needs to come together and see that happen. So I think for Irish people in particular, getting involved in things, I think being available to turn up and either admit that you don't know a huge amount, or be available to absorb information from places where you may not get them, to me is a vital thing for people to kind of be on board with. I suppose probably an example would be, was it 2 weeks ago, the Blackout Tuesday, when people were putting up the black squares on Instagram and on Facebook. And, some of my friends were like, God, there was nothing happening that day. It was just all black squares. And I was like, that kind of highlight, I'm like, the only people that were posting black squares were white people. So you need to follow more diverse people. Like, my newsfeed certainly had them, but there was other things going on because I follow different voices and groups and programs. And I was like, I could see them, but it didn't massively change my newsfeed. But I thought the learning of that was, if all you saw was black squares, all of your resources and stuff are not diverse. And that's something that you should learn from that, rather than just going, oh, I posted a black square too. I'm like, no, think about that. What's the critical learning of what that would look like on your newsfeed?
Yeah. Thank you, David. I am here a bit more than 2 years, so I really, I do feel a huge, I associate myself with this country, but I also recognize that there are a lot of things that I don't know. And one of the things that I'm really curious about, genuinely, is when did you guys first hear about direct provision? When did it start for you to be an issue? Sarah?
Well, for me, I think I started to hear quite a lot about it about 6 years ago. I had heard more about it previously. I really, to a certain degree, wasn't necessarily reaching out to find out more about it. Prior to that, it didn't sound very good at that stage. Before 6, 7 years ago, I think the problem for me was I was probably focused on our own issues at that point. We were pushing heavily for gender recognition in healthcare. And, I think all my energies were being put into that. And there was a lot of noise around me with other things that were happening, and a lot of other issues that were going on that I was maybe listening to, but wasn't really resonating with me. So obviously, as Davey said a moment ago, like even a lot of the talk around repeal had actually started quite a long time ago, but and was out there, but it wasn't actually happening really until the kind of momentum happened with Savita. And I think for me, so it was only around 6, 7 years ago that I started to really kind of investigate and start to listen to what was actually and read as to what was going on. So even for me, who's in that kind of space of trying to listen, and I've been, I've been watching Amnesty and been a member of theirs for years, and watching what they say, and yet it still wasn't resonating with me for a long time. So I think what David said about listening and actually being actively going out of your way and finding out is crucial here. But the more I've heard about it and the more I've got involved and the more I've spoken to people who've gone through the system, it has to go, but it has to also be replaced with something that is respectful and that meets the needs of the individuals that are in, that are refugees, that are in the asylum system. It has to meet that. But yeah, it's only in the last 6 or 7 years that it's really come to the fore for me in any real shape or form.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. David?
For me, I think probably, I'd say it was around 2013, 2014. And I had kind of abstractly heard about it. And I suppose on the surface, when someone gives you 2 or 3 run-on sentences about it, it sounds fine. They're like, people are put into accommodation, they're fed, they're safe. You're like, oh, well, that all sounds perfectly fine. And then it isn't until you speak to someone who's like, we're stuck in regimented times. If you miss this, and even that story earlier about sleeping at bus stops. I mean, I think if people truly could hear that, they would know. But how do you hear from people in direct provision if you don't have an online piece like this? You can't expect people to travel all over Ireland and relive their trauma at every convention in Ballygo nowhere. Like there has to be a learning that, happens from person to person. And I think for me, one of the biggest kind of, I suppose, revelations I had around asylum seeking and refugee status was the Miss Y case in, I think that was 2014. And that she had arrived in the country and was pregnant from being raped before she got here, and then couldn't access any kind of services for, a necessary abortion because she had arrived in Ireland, and the law is your refugee status is in the first country that you land in. So people are like, oh, aren't people lucky to arrive in a country like Ireland? And I'm like, evidently not, depending on your circumstance. I'm sure for some people that may be helpful, but in some circumstances it just isn't. And people are very quick to go, isn't our country lovely? And I'm like, it depends on how you're looking at it. Like you're not any better for having been born in Ireland. You're just luckier at times. It's interesting that this conversation is happening today on the 27th anniversary of decriminalization. I think kind of like Sarah said earlier, Ireland tends to be the last out the gate to do something. It's a very slow burn for 20 years, and then suddenly Ireland is more progressive than other countries in the space of 6 months. Whether it's any number of problems and any numbers of access issues, Ireland tends to very quickly bolt out ahead of the fold, but takes the longest to get out the traps, which isn't useful to the people that are stuck in that first 20 years.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Sarah, you mentioned one of the key words, I think, which is coalition. So, and I absolutely agree that without coalitional work, without building this strong coalition, we won't go anywhere. And I also agree that the coalition has to be led by people who are affected by the situation, but we need our voice to be amplified. We need you, we need your support, we need your energy, we need your expertise, we need your connections. A lot of things in this country are done through connections, are done through, you know, this kind of semi-formal sometimes way of talking and explaining and rationalizing and things like that. But just from the top of your head, you already mentioned human rights NGOs, the anti-racist initiatives, LGBT organizations. Who else should we bring to this coalition?
Top of my head, anybody we can garner to support it. I think I do think there needs to be a look at you know, people that can provide solutions to you know, the situation once something like direct provision has been dismantled. As I said earlier, you need to have a solution as well. So we need to look at who can provide those solutions. How, you know, one of the biggest issues, you know, that I'm aware of is that for a lot of direct provision centres, they are commercially run. They have that causes major problems. Well, how are we going to provide, you know, the services, for instance, in once we've dismantled this direct provision? So any coalition that might be able to be brought together to work on this would also need to include those who can provide the services for the future. Because if you don't do that, you're only going to break down a system that is, you know, clearly broken, but you're going to replace it with something else that is going to be broken also. So, you know, just thinking off the top of my head, I can't really kind of name them just at the moment, but we're obviously going to need to look at, you know, housing, you know, as Jabu said earlier, psychological services, counseling services, you know, the sort of financial services that currently, you know, are not being provided, you know, the benefits. And similarly, the benefits of being able to access work. So, you know, realistically, employers groups need to be open to being willing to take on, you know, asylum seekers, because clearly if you have an issue, as I think it was Delroy mentioned earlier, that, you know, if you've got your status and then there's this racism or this clear discrimination that because you've come through this system, somebody is not actually willing to take you on. And yet there are many, as we know, in the system have unbelievable education and skill sets that actually could benefit this country and actually give back to the country. And I think, so all those various different elements need to be brought together in a coalition, not just, you know, the NGOs or the voices themselves out there fighting for it. I think it's something that needs to be really looked at properly. But I do think the government also needs to step up here, because they're the ones who've now said in programme of government that they're going to remove it. What are their plans about replacing it? That it's not just something that is, you know, on a piece of paper, and that they're going to put it in the programme for government and they look at it down the line. They need to do it now when they start forming it, not further in a year's time or 2 years' time or 3 years' time. And I agree with you, you know, the LGBT community specifically have had a huge influence in the last 5-6 years over our own campaigns. We've created links into the politic body, and I think we need to start using them to try and benefit, you know, those indirect provisions, you know, for their benefit. It is an opportunity for us to do, not just fight for our own causes. So bringing all those voices together, I think it needs to be that sort of coalition.
Thank you, Sarah. You're such a great inspiration for me. I like hearing you.
This will become a login.
Yeah, but there is a comment. I'm calling out the government on using Aramark, the funder of U.S. prison system. And Miriam Ilyas is sending us this comment, which we are agree. David, what from your point of view who has to be in this coalition? With whom we have to build this coalition?
I mean, I'm not in terms of, an actual official form of coalition.
Yeah,
I don't really know. I do think, unions and stuff need to step up and be very vocal and very forward in demanding and defending the people who are stepping into, like, I mean, Ireland was very slow again to try and, bring in the right to work. And if it wasn't for the work that Massey did, keeping that front and center, that may still be on the back burner just by technicality. So I do think the government in general needs to be held accountable on several fronts. And like Sarah said, saying end direct provision is, absolutely fantastic. But I mean, if there isn't, a move like the affirmative action movement in America to help offset the complete debilitation that is left by that, then, pulling the rug out from under people actually may not be as helpful as it sounds when people say it out loud. There does need to be a structure of support. But I think to see, of all the changes that Ireland has made, it has been made, by knocking on doors, by having a cup of tea with your awkward aunt or uncle who may not talk about things. It needs to, like, Ireland tends to need to be changed by its nuts and bolts before the whole thing takes off. And I think programs like Sanctuary Runners down in Cork, who do, it's kind of like Park Run, but it's direct provision inclusive. I think that kind of concept would be incredible for much smaller communities to do. And I think there's a huge learning for Irish people in the last 3 or 4 months about, I mean, I can only speak from my own newsfeed, but I saw a lot of people being like, oh my God, I'm so bored and this is so stressful and I hate being stuck at home. And I'm like, you have your own bedroom, your own kitchen, your own television, your own whatever, and you're still climbing the walls. I'm like, can you even imagine having any one of those taken out from under you, never mind all of them, and for 8 years, and then suddenly, much like Delroy's story, being like, here's your papers, goodbye. You're like, I can't even get up today and shower because I'm so stressed out about COVID. So I think I would love to see Irish people taking the realization of how stressful it was to be confined within your own space, despite the fact that your space, obviously not everybody's, but generally speaking, people who had access to their own food, their own kitchen, and could go out shopping and, do all those things, and were still very stressed out by it. I'm like, if all of those things are taken off you and then suddenly you're thrown out of the bath with no towel, like, you can't just expect people to be like, anyway, I'm off to get my 39-hour job. That's just not how it could or should work. And people might hopefully begin to realize that from the situation that just happened. I would love to see, and as a result, as a community, try and bring those people in together and do more inclusive things like that. The kind of the local bingos, the quizzes, all those things that were happening. I'm like, look around you and see who isn't there. Like, is there wheelchair users there? Is there people of color? Is there, I'm like, if there isn't, possibly why isn't there? I'm like, there could be a reason behind that. And I think that solidarity amongst communities needs to be front and center, and people need to ask those questions about where those people are if they are not there. And I think that's what Irish people need to be doing in terms of accountability. Like, I'm very aware that I am a cis white Irish man. I mean, I'm probably going to get invited to sit at more tables just by sheer technicality. And I'm like, if all I can do at that table is give out that there isn't enough other people here, then that in itself might be disruptive enough to make them question it. If that's all I can bring, then that's more than other people have questioned. I think people shouldn't want to just be seen as nice all of the time. There has to be a certain amount of digging in the dirt yourself to make it easier for everyone else to come up behind. So I think that's the thing that I would love to see, is people being a bit more critical of their own spaces and places day to day, and then see how that transcends into a big societal shift like we have had repeatedly over the last few years.
Thank you, David. You brought this thing organically, and I think that the confinement and the quarantine and the whole situation around coronavirus is something that can make me a little bit easier to explain what direct provision is and how you feel. And the worst thing about this confinement and quarantine is this uncertainty, unpredictability. We don't really know what will be happening tomorrow, how long we will be sitting here. That 3 months that we are already in lockdown has been hard, but now imagine, and if it takes 3 years, Only thinking that is driving you crazy. You know? And
like that, you know,
sorry.
I was like, you know, and when you look at like Claire Byrne and Primetime, their main concern is when are we going to reopen pubs? I'm like, when are we going to get cervical smears? When are we going to get breast checks? When are we going to get all of the medical things that have taken a back seat for this? I'm like, where are they? How are they not in this constantly rerouted roadmap? I'm like, you know, there's a lot of people just like, I want to get back to normal. And I'm like, normal wasn't all that great either. You know, we should be looking at what pieces of the puzzle we can take with us and what pieces we should be leaving behind at this point.
And we were discussing Jambulo, who is in Lisdun Varna. You know, Lisdun Varna is living from summer to summer because this is the only season when they have tourists and they can get some income. And now what? Like, you know, we don't even, as people who are living in cities, we don't acknowledge like the all struggles of rural communities, which are terrible. You know, post office are closing everywhere. Like there's so many issues around that we need to address, and so many things that can be fixed if we do not segregate, separate, institutionalize people who will be living in this country, who will be having children in this country, who will be, you know, we need to address this issue as a complex, acknowledging the differences. And this was the motto I started with. You know, we are a community, but we are different within this community, and we need to be very aware about it and be aware about the special needs and special needs, things that people might need. And I'd like to also bring in kind of bridging this conversation to our actual situation and to something that has become something which is as significant as pride in the story of our LGBT nation, which is ACT UP movement. And in the movie that Sarah Schulman did, which is called United in Anger, the story of ACT UP, Zoe Leonard is saying words that resonate with me so much, because they actually, we can just change the word AIDS by coronavirus, and we will be speaking about today, about 24th of June of 2020. So she says this: what AIDS revealed was not the problem of the virus. What AIDS revealed was the problems of our society. It was this fissure through which everything, all the ways in which our society isn't working, became really clear. And I think that we need to learn, not back to normal, not even go back to the new normal. This is a lesson, and we need to learn this lesson. And without this, I don't think we have a brightest future. So sorry for this, maybe not very optimistic message at the end, but at the same time, I'd like to acknowledge and say thank you and happy Pride, Sarah and Devi, who for some reason decided to give us, didn't support this depressive message at the end. Sarah, thank you for staying. Devi, Sarah, everyone who was speaking today, happy Pride. We are in this together, and please let's be in contact. And if we can be, we need and we can and we must to help to each other. Thank you, Sarah. Love you. Everyone. Happy Pride to everyone. And I am very glad to have this platform. And I cannot really express enough how in these 2 years I have been supported through the by a lot of activists, LGBT activists, anti-racist activists, a lot of people that I really am struggling to name because not because I don't remember their names. I do remember this because I am very afraid to forget someone and not to say thanks to someone, because it's really it's really important to say things and be able to say things and be able to remember that people are helping each other, and this is something that makes us stronger, and this is something that makes us human. So let's help each other, let's not forget everyone, and especially those who need us most of all. People in need of international protection, people with disabilities, LGBT, especially trans people and non-binary people, people in undocumented people, and many, many more who really need us today, who really need us every day till we build a little bit better reality. Thank you very much. And